knowing bits and bobs about the Subtheory, it really does tick a lot of boxes for me. Portishead, Massive Attack, that sort of trip hop sound from the 90s and what have you. An amazing sound.
Get Radio Breakfast with Rich Smith.
It's Get Radio's Band Week, or this week. We are showcasing and shining a light on this week, specifically with the lead up to Truck Festival, of course, this weekend. Loads of amazing acts from across the county, and such a plethora of music, styles, people, ages even. And we go to something else as well now with Andy from the Subtheory. Morning, Andy.
Morning, Rich. How you doing?
Yeah, real good, thanks. Thanks so much for being part of this week. It's a real joy and a pleasure to catch up with you. Just kind of knowing bits and bobs about the Subtheory, it really does tick a lot of boxes for me. Portishead, Massive Attack, that sort of trip hop sound from the 90s and what have you. An amazing sound. Just for people that don't know, tell us a little bit about the band and how it's kind of evolved and morphed and all the other bits and bobs that you do.
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, we're sort of a band that's heavily influenced by Massive Attack, Portishead, Curve, if you remember them, people like DJ Shadow, but also a little bit of local bands like Radiohead. So, myself, sort of more electronic music based, whereas Kate, the vocalist, lyricist, is, I want to say folk, a bit more like indie folky, kind of that sort of stuff. So she's very influenced by people like Radiohead, but also like Subtheory and people like that. But obviously we've got Pat and George on lead guitar and bass as well. So that's really sort of builds out that live show. So we started off primarily as kind of just the two of us. Kind of wanted to, as we played bigger and bigger sort of stages and festivals and stuff, we wanted to sort of make it a bit more of a live experience. So we brought them on board, and it's worked really well. Really evolved the sound a little bit to not just electronic, but sort of taking a lot of other influences. And perhaps a lot more sort of rock. And George sort of has quite a lot of funk, shall we say? So,
I want to ask a question just about something you touched on there. Yeah. In terms of, and this has happened quite a lot in music, just generally, as music has kind of moved, dare I say, into a laptop, where you can kind of be behind a laptop and play a perfectly wonderful show with perfectly great music that you've made and what have you. Was that a consideration specifically for you to go, hang on a minute, if we aren't going to be playing live, we want people to see the live instruments, we want people to see us doing things? That's a terrible way of describing it. You know what I mean, though, rather than just clicking on clips here and there on a computer screen.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I've always struggled with that idea that I personally, is that I love performing, but I've never really wanted to be a focus, like on stage. So for me, it's always about bringing something to light rather than just seeing one person on a laptop. For me, that's just the way I am. And it was very much the same in the previous. So I was, I don't know if you remember, I was in Death of Hi-Fi, which was a bit similar, but a bit more kind of a different style of electronic music. And it was always a bit like, for me, if I want to go to a show, I don't want to see like a person behind a laptop necessarily, unless they're doing something really cool with visuals or something like that. I want to see a bit more of the traditional live experience. By the way, and that doesn't mean that anybody that does that isn't valid at all. That's just my kind of personal view on it. And I think that I've seen some brilliant shows. And I know, so somebody like Ian from Tiger Mendoza locally, he's very good because he does a whole bunch of stuff, and he does shows where it's just him, but shows where it's other people as well. So I kind of like that versatility.
No, it's fascinating. Also, as well, kind of flip-flopping from the live aspect to performing in front of people, to get people listening in a club environment, in a live environment. Also, the work that you've done for TV and radio as well, with the BBC Sounds documentary "Moment of Truth" with Oxford United. How did that come about? And is that must be a slight different way of working, rather than kind of working for TV versus working for live?
Yeah, it's firstly, to answer your first bit, it came about because I did some work I've done various bits of work for TV and film, etc., and radio over the years. Did a lot of stuff for like things like Match of the Day and various other sort of sports programs for the BBC. And you get to know people, and people sort of say, "Oh, I like this person because they deliver." That's the kind of the key thing. So what happens is they give you a brief to say, well, in fact, it could be, they give lots of different types of briefs. You could have a brief that's very detailed and says, I need it to do exactly this, and I need it to sound like this and have these cue points. Or it's quite often the case, you can have something to say, I sort of have a vague idea. Go ahead and do what you can. And then it can be great, but it will also be frustrating because, of course, what happens is you go back and forth a lot with, I don't really know what you want, so I'm going to guess. How's this? And they go, no, that's not what I want. Make it more, whatever, some vague sort of adjective. And you go, okay. I think for me, I was asked to do Moment of Truth, which was actually very easy because I kind of, they sort of gave me the brief of what the programme was about, and then it just happened it was about Oxford United, Rotherham United as well. So I sort of, and they told me roughly what like the show was going to be about, and I sort of started thinking about, right, okay, it's about like the emotions. So it's a high pressure environment. It's the kind of the emotions of pushing, unfortunately unsuccessfully in Oxford United's case, for promotion in the last 3 months of the season. So I started to think about how that sort of would translate into musical terms, and that sort of came quite easily. I did another sort of an audio sitcom with Vic Reeves, Morgana Robinson, Bern Gorman, a couple of other people like that, which was, it actually found it quite hard because it was a comedy. And it's really easy to go, oh, I'm just going to write some comedy music and make it a bit wacky, and that's not really what they want. They have to sort of play it quite straight. Yeah. It was based on a 70s cop, like a 70s sort of cop show theme. I don't know if you remember those kind of Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah.
But set in like northern England in some seaside town, and it was so I sat and watched. My research for that was I sat and watched loads of old TV shows like Professionals and Streets of San Francisco. And then went, okay, let's just, if I was writing for that, what would I do? So I sort of came up with this weird kind of crazy 70s sort of funk thing, which was great.
It's absolutely, it's fascinating just getting an insight into to the two sides of it, because I think in every job, and especially in music, you've probably got people at the top who know absolutely nothing about music, who go, I want it to sound big. I want it to sound cool. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you want drums or guitars or keyboards or anything? The patience of you, honestly, Andy, must be absolutely ridiculous dealing with those people.
Well, that's when you're lucky it's not face to face, and you can just sort of grit your teeth, say what you want, get it out, and then go, okay, right, let's go again, and sort of be more polite back.
Delete that first email and go, no, that's too passive aggressive.
Never reply immediately.
Brilliant stuff.
I think the big difference, and really quickly, because I know your time pressure, the big difference is when you're writing for yourself, you've got like freehand, you're your own master, you can do what you want, and you can make as many revisions, you've only got yourself to kind of blame. Right, for that, it's you're responsible, so you're getting your homework marked. You're like, it's a bit different. So.
That's such a good way of putting it, Andy, and bless you for realising it's radio and we have time precious things as well.
No worries.
But first and foremost, we're going to be playing the track "The Crown of Thorns." Tell us a little bit about that, and also where can we find out a little bit more about you, your work, and where you're going to be this summer.
So "Crown of Thorns" is the new single. I think it's going to be released either mid-August or September, depending on when we get it back from mastering. But it's a little bit of a different, it's where it's mostly written by Kate, actually. So it's normally what happens is it's 50-50. I sent some stuff over to Kate. She went, I don't really like it, we're going to rewrite some of it, and sort of came back. And so it's probably a bit more her, so it's quite exciting because that's a change in the dynamic for us. but it's something I think that it's indicative of the sort of the way the sound is going. So it's quite exciting from that point. And the album that we're writing at the moment is going to be sort of around that sort of sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very excited about that. In terms of where to catch us, obviously Instagram, you can search up the Subtheory on Facebook, if anyone's still on Facebook these days. Or, probably Threads, maybe, I don't know, whatever the new latest thing, we're on there.
Whatever it is, whatever the new thing has been invented in the last 20 minutes, we're on it.
Exactly. So I think we're sort of not playing too many shows this summer because we're actually in the middle of recording the album.
Yeah,
we're working on. So, and then sort of come autumn time, we'll be back playing shows. We did a lot of shows last year. We're sort of taking a little bit of a break this year to sort of focus on writing and recording. So
brilliant stuff. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in a live environment come the autumn. Best of luck with recording the new album. And this is the brilliant Subtheory with Crown of Thorns on Get Radio on BAM Week.